Hello everyone. Welcome back to another part of What If Deku Was Iron Man. If you enjoy, please like and subscribe, it motivates me to make more. I did not write this story, the writer is mrkage, please support them. Now let's dive in. Izuku checked the hour on his phone again. Despite still having a bit of time before the meetup, he and Toshi were already here, along with boys from 1A and Togata-senpai. He guessed it was only natural for girls to take a bit longer. His mom told him a few times that women do it to ensure they look perfect. All he had to do was to take a shower, change into his formal clothes, consisting from a simple black suit and tie with light green dress shirt, and battle with his curls. Although he didn't need to do it for today, he still chose to use some gum, making him a tad more presentable. He really liked his curly hair. Mom and his girlfriends played with them just right, never tugging them too much or anything like that, giving him the unpleasant experience. But he couldn't help but envy Toshi, who just slicked his locks back and was done with it. He went through a struggle of brushing them to straighten as much as possible and then applying a gum. After almost 20 minutes of fighting, he finally managed to get that most of it stuck to his right side, creating sort of a fringe, with a few bangs left on the left. It looked good, at least he hoped so. "Why did you bring puppy?" Toshi asked quietly, eyeing the android, which stood a few steps away from them. Peeking at his friend, who for his formal wear chose black suit with light lavender shirt and purple tie, he once again couldn't help but be envious of easiness he had with dealing with his hair. "You know it tends to get restless and sad when it's left alone," he replied with a small shrug. The memory of just how overjoyed the robot was when it saw them after its first night in the lab replied in his mind. Alan made it more bearable for puppy, but the program still thrived for human contact. "Yeah, still can't get just how machine can feel, but whatever. Do you think it was smart for it to bring our cases?" His friend questioned, pointing with his head at the objects in puppy's hands. Izuku hummed to himself and gazed at his child. Almost as it read his mind, the android tightened his grasps on the handles, signaling that it won't disappoint him. "I'm sure it's going to be fine. Maybe it will give us a few more people for tomorrow's lecture," he answered nonchalantly. A giggle reached his ears. A perverted one. Glancing to the side, he saw that Mineta was releasing those annoying noises, while constantly moving his fingers as if he was trying to feel something in the air. Next to him, Kaminari-kun and Kirishima-san stood with "I'm done" expressions on their faces. "Don't stare at him that hard or you're going to kill him with it," Toshi remarked, letting out a snicker. He didn't respond to that and turned away from the midget. He didn't him to be anywhere near his girls, like in at least 10-meter radius. Unfortunately, those type of people proved to be very persistent in their endeavor and couldn't be that easily feared. A ding from an elevator reached his ears. When the door opened, a bit nervous Jiro-san walked through it. The girl's outfit looked quite good in his opinion, definitely fitting her punkish vibe. After her, two goddesses showed up to him. First was Mei, who wore a black cheapao with a pink dragon swirling around her legs, resting its head at her left hip. The material hung her nicely, showing her great curves, adding even more sexiness to it. On her feet were simple black flats, most likely due to her not knowing how to walk around on heels. Her bubblegum hair were kept in the usual style with bangs framing her head and bun on top, although into it were plunged two black sticks. He could see makeup on her face. Not much though, just enough to bring out her natural beauty even more. Momo followed her, dressed in a crimson dress that had open back and rather low cut on the cleavage. There was a slit on the side, staring on her mid-thigh, which allowed her to move a bit more freely, seeing as the material hung her body like it was some sort of second skin to it. The added benefit to it was a glance at her long leg. On her feet were a pair of simple black heels. While her usual bang from right side remained in its place, the rest of her hair were brushed up and slightly to the right, kept in place by a golden accessory. She too had just a tad of makeup, enchanting her features even more. Under her left arm, she held a red purse. Holy crap. He knew that he lucked out, having two extremely beautiful young women for girlfriends, but this? This was too much for his poor heart, that was beating like crazy in his chest. Was it going to explode? Probably. No wait, definitely with just how sensual they looked. Oh, and they were walking with that extra sway in their hips toward him, making his eyes follow the movement. Yup, he was a goner. "Dude, you're drooling," Toshi whispered, lightly hitting him in the ribs with his elbow. Closing his jaw, that hung wide open, and wiping out his chin, he ignored his friend's snicker and gazed at those goddesses in front of him. You look great. Both of you. Perfect actually. His words sounded like an insult to just how glorious they were presenting themselves. It was some deadly combination of cute, beautiful and sexy, that should be definitely forbidden. Momo chuckled at his reaction and put her hand on his cheek, cupping it lightly, sending him into some weird sensory overload. "Thank you, Izuku. You look pretty handsome to me," she told him, purring out his name, with a smirk on her face. The one that Midnight pulled out. Of course it only added to just how amazing she was right now. "You see, May, that's what I meant by knocking his socks off." So it was all planned? Not that he minded. Their girlfriend glanced between them and made a long "oh," like she just discovered something new. Gazing at him, she grinned widely. "So you think we're like super pretty, right?" she asked with light blush on her cheeks. All he could do was nod dumbly, earning a laugh from his girls. If he died today, he would die as the happiest man alive. "Please stop it. I can feel my teeth getting cavities," Toshi said with loud groan, hiding his eyes behind his palm. Excuse him, it wasn't his fault that his girlfriends were just stunning and took away his ability to speak normally. "Sorry for being late, everyone," Melissa called them, walking from another elevator. The girl's outfit was a nice one, bringing out her natural charms. Peeking at his friend, whose jaw hung loosely, he let out a snicker. "Look, who's drooling now," he said in low voice. "Shut up," Toshi hissed, covering his mouth with his hand and turning away from them. A slight redness was present on his cheeks. He heard Momo snicker at their friend reaction. He couldn't wait to tell her about how the teen was after Melissa spoke his name. And the best part of it? The night was still young. He believed that they would have plenty of occasions to get even more blackmail material against the boy. "Seeing as everyone is here, I think we should go to the hall. The opening speech would be given any minute now," Ida-kun informed them, popping off the bubble they all were in. "Yeah, let's go and party," Kaminari-kun cheered, gaining a loud answers from Kirishima-san and Mineta. They didn't even make a single step towards the reception hall, when a loud alarm rung through the whole corridor. A heavy shutters closed on windows as the generic, robotic voice gave an announcement about a bomb placed in the building, asking everyone to remain calm and not leave their place. Great, there went their relaxing night out. "What is it about?" Mineta cried out loudly, shivering his place. "Guys, the intercom isn't working," Kirishima-san added, while pointing at the device on the wall. "The phones have no service either," Todoroki-san said, showing them his mobile phone. "The elevator isn't working," Jiro-san called, pressing the button repeatedly. "I'm not sure, but something seems wrong," Melissa told them, while gazing at the floor with furrowed brows. "The high alert mode wouldn't be triggered by a simple bomb. Besides, I know that building was checked about half-hour ago by security. It's a standard procedure for those sort of events." Izuku frowned and adopted his thinking position. If a person, who lived here daily, said that something wasn't right, then an issue was definitely present. "We should go and check the reception hall. We need more information," he announced, gaining everyone's attention. "I agree with Midoriya. For now we need to see with what kind of situation we're dealing with," Togata-senpai told them in serious manner. While the teen still had a light smile on his face, the aura around him was much different from what it was during the day. He would risk calling it a professional one. Peeking at others, he saw them nod at his suggestion. "Melissa, please show us the way." "Of course," the girl replied without hesitation. Jogging to where the party was supposed to be, they firstly used emergency stairs to go one floor up and then begun passing through utterly empty corridors. This just added more questions and pressure to them. A tight knot tied itself around his stomach. Something just didn't add up. After some minutes they entered an intersection with rails around a round hole in the floor, right in the middle of the passage. "Guys, wait up," Toshi called, stopping them all. The boy was pointing at the glassy circle in the ground. "We can see the party room from here." Quickly joining his friend, Izuku gazed through it and gritted his teeth. All guests were laying on the floor with their hands on their heads. Heroes, who attended the event, were tied with some kind of blue capturing tape, which restricted their movement completely. This of course included All Might, who was laying on his side on the platform, shaking a bit against his restraints. Around the room walked few individuals wearing black masks, black bulletproof vests and armed with rifles. A hostage situation? And even the symbol of peace had his hands literally tied. There was no doubt that, if the hero tried anything funny, terrorists would start killing people. Damn. Gazing around his companions, he saw them clenching their hands tightly around the rails and nervous expressions on their faces. They even have All Might. What the hell is going on? Mineta shouted loudly, gaining a sharp look from almost everyone, which silenced him. We need to figure this out? Izuku mumbled quietly, thinking about his options. Jiro-san, he called, making the girl look at him. Can you use your quirk to hear what is going on there? He asked hopefully. Yeah, sure. Just let me plug in, she replied, crouching down. One of her earlobes extended itself and struck the floor. The girl peeked at him and gave him thumb up. Pulling out his phone, he used the flashlight to try and gain All Might's attention. After few tries, the hero caught up to what he was doing, tilting his head towards them. Izuku signaled the number 1 hero to start talking and pointed at Jiro-san. Boom. The villains have taken over the tower. They have the security system under complete control, keeping everyone on the island as a hostage. Heroes as well. It's dangerous. Run away from here as quickly as possible and hide yourself good. The girl repeated to them the message in a bit shaky voice, showing her nervousness. This is really bad. Kaminari-kun commented, trembling a little. We need to go back to the safer location. Villains can spot as easily from here. Togata-senpai commanded them and begun going back to the staircase. Izuku took a deep breath and put his body onto autopilot as it followed others, while his mind went into overdrive. He counted 4 terrorists at the party, plus 1 guy with steel mask in white coat, which he supposed was a linchpin. If they held the grasp on the security system, which must have been here in the central tower, then it meant 1 or 2 more criminals. Of course they could also have some guys roaming around. So in rough estimate their number were either equal or lower. This already put them at the disadvantage. Wait, that sounded like he was thinking about a battle plan. Half of his mind scolded him for those thoughts, saying that he was insane to even consider this as an option. Other part continued scheming, trying to figure out the best possible way to proceed with this plan. Blinking back to reality, he saw everyone looking tense and keeping their eyes on the floor. They had uneasy expression, showing just how frustrated they were about the whole situation. In addition, Togata-senpai had that weird vibe from him, like he was one step away from jumping solo into the action, but couldn't leave them alone. He glanced at Puppy, which was faithfully standing next to him and his girls. Puppy, can you get into the contact with Alan? He questioned, accidentally getting everyone attention. What are you trying to do, Midoriya? Todoroki-san asked in slight curiosity. Alan can get access through Puppy into the I-Island security system if we link the body with intercom. This way, it can try to get back the control, he explained, trying to get their morals up. Is that even possible? Like, I don't doubt you or your AI, it's just this place has the same security as Tartarus. Kirishima-san asked, rubbing his neck in uneasy manner. Mei let out a triumphant laugh and grinned widely. Of course Alan can do it. He's the one that keeps hold of UA's security, she said in proud tone. That was true, his first AI was constantly checking the school's network, keeping it safe from any attack, by changing the gates and addresses to all servers every hour around the clock. In case of any virtual attack, Alan would keep shuffling the data, while simultaneously counter-hacking whoever was trying to get in. I'm sorry, Father. Can't contact with Big Brother. Puppy finally said, dumping their mood even more. Well, there went his only solution for not fighting. So? What are we going to do now? Jiro-san asked with scowl, rubbing her palm against her arm. I suggest that we follow the instructions of UA teacher All Might and escape from here. Ida-kun told them, gazing at them seriously. Is it really fine? There are people here, who are in danger. Kirishima-san countered, frowning deeply. Are you stupid? Even All Might is captured. What can we, students, do? Mineta cried at them, shaking in the corner. But we can't just leave. Besides, what chances do we have for not getting caught? Kaminari-kun replied, while grabbing his hair tightly with his hands. I agree with Kaminari-san. We don't know if we can escape. Momo said, biting her nail and gazing at the wall, as it had the answer to their problem. I too think it'll be hard to get out of here. Melissa told them quietly, while having a thinking expression on her features. Before he could say anything, he caught the Toshi's eyes locked on him. There was a glint in them, signaling the great determination the boy had. It was almost as if he was telling him that this was the moment to act, not talk. Smiling lightly, Izuku let out a sigh and took off his jacket, placing it on the rail. Puppy, give me and Toshi the cases. Izuku, what are doing? Mei asked, looking at him with a tilted head. Getting ready, he replied nonchalantly. Wait a moment, are you going to fight? Jiro-san questioned loudly. I too feel like we should help, but... The girl gazed to the side, biting her lip hard. What about having a hero license and quirkless hero ban? Kirishima-san added, swallowing hard. You need the license to legally use your quirk. Toshi replied, putting his bag on the floor and getting rid of his jacket. As for that outrageous law? Izuku begun, smirking a little. Last time I've checked, I-Island is independent from any and all governments. So Japanese politicians can shove it, he told them, ignoring the small glare from Momo. But still, how can we fight the villains? Kaminari-san asked, still not convinced about the operation. We don't really have to fight. Todoroki-san said, gazing up in the air in thinking manner. What do you mean by that? Ida kun question in curiosity. Villains don't know about us, which gives us the advantage. If we can sneak by and get the security system back, then we can free all the heroes and sway the scale in our favor. Momo told them, her voice gaining more and more confidence with every word spoken. The control room is on the last floor. By using emergency staircase we can get there. Besides, we're still unharmed, so I guess that villains still don't know how to operate it properly. Melissa added happily. Togata-senpai let out a triumphant laugh and struck a victory pose. That's the thinking, greenhorns. Now we have a plan to save the day. Good thing that I put on a special boxers, so you won't see my willy, he said in cheerful manner. Everyone gazed at him with blank expressions, trying to understand what he had just told them. Willy? Todoroki-san asked after a second of eerie silence. His voice was low and quiet. The upper classmate looked at him with blinding smile. Yeah. Willy. My few. How Midnight once called it, he said, sticking out his tongue and thinking hard, before snapping his fingers and grinning widely. Oh right, the one-eyed snake. You pervert. Jiro-san shouted with red face, sending out her earphone jack at the teen's head, for it to just phase through it. Izuku just blinked, not knowing what to do in this situation. Was it even worth it? And the fact that the boy was laughing hard at Idakuin's lecture about a proper way of speaking didn't help much. I'll go with you, too. Melissa said loudly, putting her hand on her chest. Her face could be described as determined one, despite that wobbly smile it held. Are you sure? I mean, we don't know what awaits us up there. Kirishima-san asked in unsure tone. I agree. It could be dangerous. Idakuin added, waving his hand around. I'm the only one who knows the layout of Central Tower here, so I can guide you. And as Academy student I know a bit about security system, so I believe that I'll be able to return it to normal. The girl countered, her voice carrying as much conviction as it could. I agree with Melissa. We need someone to show us the way. Momo said, sending the blonde a smile. I can help you with security system. The two of us can get it back in few seconds. Mei spoke with a huge grin on her face. A small smirk made its way on his lips. He was glad that his girlfriend supported Melissa's decision to join them. Her addition was very crucial, because he doubted that they would be able to find their way around, if they got lost. Plus, if the girl was serious about becoming a hero, it would be a great experience. Standing next to Toshi, he peeked at him. The boy nodded, signaling that he was ready to go. Izuku put his suitcase down, laying in on the front. It was show time. They stomped hard on the center of their cases, with enough strength to flip them to standing positions. While that happened, a counterpart enveloped their feet, snapping with a loud clang. The devices opened, before them, showing a mass of silver parts and some wiring. Leaning down, they grabbed two handles, sticking out from colored parts and pushed them down, until they felt resistance and a pressure of mechanism locking around their palm. Standing up, they brought the rest of gadget with them, placing it on their chests and straightened their arms, letting another metallic sound. All the plates and folds around their bodies started aligning, giving out small noises, followed by a soft whines from arc reactors and repulsors powering up. At the end, the parts around their heads snapped into place, before the masks slid onto their faces. Iron Man Mark IV and Negotiator Mark II. Those were specially designed to be the fast response armors that could be taken by them everywhere. Those suits were very light, thus giving weak defense, and didn't possess much in terms of firepower. They were just a tools allowing them to survive until Mamps got to their position with more powerful versions of their armors. If anything, Toshi's suit was better equipped than his, having the whips in it. He tried to learn how to fight with those, but after several miserable and rather embarrassing tries, he gave up. He gazed at the faces of his companions and smirked at their awestruck expressions. His girlfriends had giant smiles on their faces as well, showing how proud. You guys did it in perfect sync. Jiro-san stated, still eyeing their armors. How long did you practice this? Izuku scratched his cheek, while Toshi nervously touched his neck. They would never admit that they had literally spent 2 days getting it down, under Momo's instructions. His girl all but demanded to make a show from it, and after she told Mei, those 2 vixens convinced him to do it, claiming it would make them extremely happy. Anyway, Izuku said, opening his face mask. We should get going. But before that, we need to make a formation. Huh, why is that? Kaminari-kun asked, not understanding the purpose of this. In the case of troubles we'll be able to react faster and in more organized way, right? Todoroki-kun questioned, although it sounded more like he needed a confirmation of his suspicions. I see. Momo said, nodding to herself. In that case, I think Melissa should be in the middle of the pack, to protect her the most. That's true. As for the rest of us? Toshi, Ida-kun, Todoroki-san and me will take the front of the group. Togata-senpai, Kaminari-kun, Kirishima-san and Puppy will take the rear. The rest will go in the middle. Izuku told them strongly, getting nods from everyone. I'll plug my jack from time to time and check our surroundings. Jiro-san stated, her earlobes pointing at the wall. I can help with checking for potential traps and such. Mei added, her eyes spinning around, showing that she was entering her Hawkeye mode. He nodded at them, waiting for everyone to get into positions. He used this small gap to step closer to Togata-senpai. How is your control over One for All? He whispered into the teen's ear. His senior hummed lightly. At good day I can get up to 20%. The boy replied truthfully. Is it a good day? Izuku asked with a sliver of hope. Letting out a chuckle, Togata-senpai grinned at him. We shall see. Of course that would be an answer. Why did he even bother? Before leaving he picked the sight of Kaminari-kun standing beside Mineta and whispering something to the frightened boy. The small teen immediately brightened up, gaining a blush on his face and begun changing harem under his breath. Quirking his brow at the blonde, the teen answered with a shake of his head, showing that he really didn't want to know. Izuku supposed that it was true. They climbed the stairs, jogging lightly to speed up the process as much as possible. All the girls, that had heels on their feet, left them behind, not wanting to accidentally trip over. Checking the number on the wall, he saw that they had reached 10th floor. Already some were puffing a bit, not used to that amount of exercise. If he remembered correctly, Central Tower had over 100 floors. Melissa, how many floors are here? He asked over his shoulder. 200 to be exact. The security room is on the top one. The girl informed, trying to get her breathing under control. That's too much. Mineta whined loudly. Would you prefer to get caught by the villains then? Momo asked with a huff, silencing any further complaints. Getting a constant report from Mei and Jiro-san, they were able to reach 80th floor with a hitch. But what worried him was that every exit from staircase, after 20th floor, was closed with a heavy plate of steel. In the case of any troubles, they were sitting ducks. Unless Togata-senpai used his monstrous strength to make a way for them. A shudder, Ida-kun announced grimly, gazing at the panels, blocking their way up. Do we break it? Todoroki-san asked, getting his breathing heavily and flexing his right arm. If we do that, the security system will react, giving out our position to villains. Melissa said, conforming his suspicions about the barrier. Hey, why don't we go this way? Mineta questioned, gaining their attention. The boy's hand was reaching towards the handle on the side of the doors, that for some weird reason didn't have the partition over them. Don't! Toshi shouted, lunging at the teen. Unfortunately he was too late. Mineta pulled the handle, opening the passage for them, while the red light lightened next to the grip. Are you a moron? Mei said, throwing her head back and placing her palms over her face. A muffled groan left her lips, showing just how frustrated she was at the showcase of stupidity. What have happened? Kirishima-san questioned, gazing at them weirdly. This imbecile basically signaled villains, where we are. Jiro-san explained, shaking her head. We need to move, now. Momo commanded harshly at them. They rushed, changing from jog to running, making their way through the corridors. One thing he noticed was that the armor made it a bit difficult. He would need to look up to it at the later date. Peeking over the shoulder he saw no signs of trouble there, but instead of putting him at ease, it only added to the pressure. Villains were no doubt alarmed about them, but they didn't do anything. Were they preparing a trap? Yaoyorozu-san, it's not time for a snack. Ida-kun shouted, waving at the pale yellow bar in a silver wrap that his girl was holding. Mei let out a victorious laugh and grinned at the boy. It's not a snack. It's a fast-intake high-calorie food, designed especially for people that use body fats in large quantities for their quirks, she explained enthusiastically. I didn't know a thing like that existed. Melissa said in awe, eyeing the bar. Me and Yao Papa started playing with the idea and begun testing it. It's the first real product of our efforts. His girlfriend added, puffing her chest forward in prideful manner. Oh right, he had heard about this. It begun around the same time, when Momo's new costume was created. His father-in-law had a quirk that allowed for a controlled process of burning his lipids, additionally making it more effective than for a normal person. He asked Mei if she wanted to help with this project, but she firmly said she wanted to do it on her own. He respected that greatly. Gazing at Momo, he saw her biting off almost a half of it and munching as fast as possible, before swallowing. Then her cheeks puffed out and her face turned green. What's wrong? He asked in concern. At first it was bland, but the aftertaste is horrible, she replied, before taking the rest of the bar. A heavy, metallic clung made him turn his head straight ahead. Crap! The shutters were closing before them, cutting off their road. The suits didn't have the power to open them and he wasn't sure if Togata-senpai could do it, by punching the steel. Maybe Puppy would help with it, but he wasn't sure. There! The door's in the wall. Ida-kun shouted, waving his hand at the closed passage. Don't stand around. Ice boy, stop it. Toshi commanded, grabbing Melissa and Jiro-san around their waists and taking onto the air. A wave of crystal-clear ice shoot forward, getting in between the shutting parts of partition, leaving a way for them to cross. Getting a hold of his girls, he too rose up, squeezing through the hole. A sound of engine reached his ears. Looking to the side, he saw Ida-kun swinging his legs at the doors with a blue fire spewing from his exhaustion pipes, leaving his pants in shreds. The metal bended inwards and gave away completely after a second, rising a cloud of dust and clearing their way out. Doing a quick head count, he confirmed that everyone was with them. A first hustle after them, but how many more were to come? Better not waste time for thinking about it and destroying his morals. Stepping inside the room, he saw a mini forest there. All kinds of lush trees, bushes and grass were present here. The ceiling was pretty high with a fenced pathways hanging from it, stopping somewhere in the middle towards the floor and connection to the walls around the room. From a specially designed pipes water poured down right into the ponds in the ground, no doubt some kind of hydration system. There were actually a few levels of greenery rising up, with some vines hanging from the open spaces. The room was very bright, having lamps every few steps and a lights on the top. What is this place? Kaminari-kun asked, looking around in awe. A plant factory, here the scientists test how quirks influence vegetation. Melissa explained. She was rather short on her breath from all the running they did. If her stamina would end before reaching the top floor, then he would have Puppy carry her. Stop! Mei shouted at them, pointing toward the center of the room. The elevator's coming up. Quickly touching the side of his helmet and turning the wheel around, he zoomed in. The display screen above the doors showed 55th floor and was rising fast. Hide, now, he ordered, going into the thicket. He hoped that villains would pass them, allowing them to continue without a hitch. Please universe, have mercy. Can't we somehow use the elevator? Kirishima-san asked hopefully. No, only authorized people can access it. We can't brute force it either. It's as sturdy as bomb shelter. Melissa replied, furrowing her brows. Come on, give us the conveniences of modern civilization. Minato whispered loudly, shaking like the leaf and jumping up, when the sound from elevator stopping. Stealing his nerves, Izuku peeked just above the line of bushes they all were hiding in. Ironically, with his green helmet and hair, he looked like a part of greenery here. The doors opened with a soft whine, showing two people inside. One was super small and had short, black hair worn in round shape on the top with two stripes going around the head. The other was tall and skinny with face shaped like a goat and dark green mohawk-shaped hair. Both were wearing the clothes the masked villains had at the party. Signaling the number of enemies to his companions, Izuku kept a watchful eye glued to them. The two were talking about something, but he couldn't hear them, due to the distance. Distance that was beginning to shrink, because the two were coming their way. Pressing a finger to his lips, he peeked at Togata-senpai. The teen got the message and got ready to jump out any second. He saw Toshi moving his palms around, changing the focus on repulsors. Following his friend's idea, he did the same. Using the surprise their senior made, they would knock out the villains with quick blast. There you are, damn kid. one of the villains shouted angrily. Wait. Kid? Pushing a bit of bush from his way, he saw Kirishima-san standing awkwardly a few meters from the criminals, who were glaring at him. The teen gave out a short laugh. Hey, I've lost my way down to the party and got stuck here, when the system made announcement. Is everything okay now? The boy said with strained smile on his lips, clearly not prepared to this situation. Kirishima-san must have circled around the bushes, putting as much distance between him and their position as possible. But why? Why was he sacrificing himself for them? They could have worked it out somehow. Gritting his teeth hard, he promised himself that he was going to ask the boy about it. That is after he rescued him. You can't lie to me, kid. Taller villain shouted cockily, swinging his right arm back. The glove on his palm destroyed, when his hand enlarged, showing webbed claws. Pushing his arm forward, the criminal released a whistling projectile of compressed air, straight at the terrified teen. Just then a mini glacier came to live, burrowing underneath it the two evildoers. Snapping his head to the side, Izuku saw Todoroki-san, who had a trail of ice coming from his right foot and breathed out a thick mist. The rumbling sounded from the mass of ice, signaling that villains still weren't done fighting. The teen scowled lightly and turned to them, sending an iced pathway in their direction, which ran around them, making a perfect circle. We're going to buy you time, the boy announced, when the pillar of ice began lifting them up. Togata-senpai jumped from the platform and smiled brightly. I'm going to make sure things go smoothly here. The rest of you go now, he told them, shrugging off his jacket. The pillar stopped growing right next to the platform, giving them an easy way out. Jumping on it, Izuku helped the rest to cross over, before looking for the direction that would lead them to escape. At the both ends of the pathways were closed doors. Maybe they could force them open? Are they going to be okay? Melissa asked in worry, peeking at their companions. Todoroki is the strongest student from our class. Ida-kun said reassuringly. Yeah, and Kirishima is as tough as a rock. Kaminari-kun added, laughing at the small joke he made. And Vault Boy is from the big three. We all saw how easily he trashed the villain attack today. Toshi told them, looking over his shoulder at the girl. They were right in those estimates. Although he suspected that Togata-senpai would be more than enough to deal with it in the matter of seconds. Still, better be safe than sorry. Once again Ida-kun destroyed the doors with a powerful swing of his leg, showing them exactly the same situation that almost trapped them earlier. He heard the desperate calls coming from some of his companions, giving him the good look at just how this whole situation was getting to them. Hey, can we use that? May asked loudly, pointing at the small trapdoor at the ceiling. The maintenance room for the sunlight system. Melissa said in wonder. Does it have an emergency ladder or something? Jiro-san questioned hopefully. The blonde girl thought hard, before replying. There is a manual one, but can be only accessed from the inside. So we can't go any further? Mineta asked, gritting his teeth hard. Here you go, honey. Momo said to May, putting something on her hand and giving her a kiss on a cheek. He quirked a brow at his girls. Both had a sly smirks on their faces and dangerous glints in their eyes. May's eyes zoomed in as she took the throwing pose. Swinging her arm and letting out a quiet grunt, she pinched a small disc toward the doors. It hit its mark and after a second or two, it exploded, clearing the passage and charring the ceiling around them. Great job you two! Izuku cheered at his girlfriends, putting a small blushes on their faces. I see. Now Midoriya-kun, Shinso-kun and Puppy can lift us up there without much trouble. Ida-kun said loudly, expressing his joy. I doubt it. Melissa said, making the boy stop his arms mid-rapid swings. Maintenance room is 2 floors above and from the looks of it, they can barely squeeze themselves in the armors, she told them, eyeing the suits. To let the ladder down, we need someone to go through the vent and use the outside wall to get at the top floor. There is another trapdoor like that, which will bring them straight to the destination. The girl explained carefully, doing her best to not sound desperate. Someone small, who can climb the walls? Jiro-san mumbled aloud. Suddenly all of them turned to the side, gazing at the very small and trembling form of Minoru Mineta. Like hell I'm going to do it. The boy shouted at the top of his lungs, crossing his arms on his chest. Come on Mineta. Do it for the harem. Kaminari-kun pleaded, winking at the teen. It almost seemed to do the trick, when the small drool escaped from Mineta's mouth, but then the teen stomped on the ground and shook his head vigorously. Okay, Grapist, listen to me. Toshi said, releasing an irritated sigh. Who do you? The boy called, but suddenly his whole body froze and his eyes turned blank. the obvious effect of his friend's quirk. Now, the teen begun, crouching next to the Mineta. You're going to be finally useful and go up there to bring down the ladder. After you're done, punch yourself in the nuts. Hard. Toshi commanded with a wide, overly satisfied smirk on his lips. Izuku held back a flinch at the last words. Wasn't that taking it too far? He knew that the small student deserved it, but a small amount of mercy could be given every now and then. Isn't it a bit too much? Melissa asked in uncomfortable tone. He deserves it. His girlfriends and Jiro-san replied in perfect sync with voices that didn't carry any hint of emotions. Apparently there was no mercy for Mineta. Shoto dodged yet another swing of compressed air from the tall villain, who was his opponent. The other one, who turned himself into a huge, purple gorilla, was chasing after Togata-senpai. Kirishima was still stuck in the wall, after he shielded him from the swipe of the transformed criminal. He guessed he would need to thank him later. Putting his right leg before him, he started producing ice from his heel, pushing him forward at a great speed that somehow was matched perfectly by his enemy. Shoto had no trouble maintaining balance in this position, even making wild dodges from the attacks sent his way. Who would have thought that those ice skating lessons the bastard made him attend to would prove useful? Shoto thought hard about his current situation. From what he observed from the holes in the ground or in his ice walls, his opponent's quirk allowed him to drill through anything the ball of air touched. This meant that his right side would be pretty much useless in offensive manners, while giving him a little bit of defense. He suspected that the flames from his left side wouldn't be much of a help either. He had two options left. Overpower the villain with the sheer force of his quirk or take it to close combat, where his enemy's quirk was useless. And while old Shoto wouldn't hesitate with the first option, this new Shoto, that was born after the sports festival, didn't want to do it. He wasn't a brute like the man who gave the semen to his mother. He wasn't the expert at this range. If he had to, he would say that Yaoyorozu became one of the most feared fighters in their class. It most likely had to do something with those spars she had with Midoriya. Maybe he could join them? A thought for later. Doing a sharp turn, he changed his course, going straight at the criminal, who stopped for a second from the shock. He began swaying from side to side, making it harder to aim at him. When he was close enough, he laid low and slid on the ground, trying to sweep the legs of his opponent. Unfortunately, the enemy's reflexes were too good, dodging the attack with well-timed jump. Not being the one to be discouraged, he pressed forward, trying all combinations of punches and kicks he could think of and his body could pull off. He had no doubt that it was rather sloppy, but it seemed to do the trick, keeping his enemy from using the quirk. But another problem arose. This was just another standstill, where none of them could find a way sway the victory on his side. Shoto refrained from using his right side, because, if the villain dodged it and put the distance between them, he was more than sure that he wouldn't be able to get close again. As for his opponent, while they had a longer reach and superior reflexes, the criminal wasn't used to CQC. Just when he was close to being desperate, something flew and hit his opponent, pushing him away. Snapping his neck to the side with dumbstruck expression, he saw Togata-senpai without the top of his suit, showing off his buffed silhouette, who had his right fist outstretched in his direction. A white lighting cracked around his form. Power! The teen screamed at the top of his lungs, giving some triumphant pose. Looking toward his opponent, Shoto saw him crushed against the wall, pinned into it by unconscious body of the other villain. Not wasting any more time, he released a huge wave of ice, covering them almost fully, leaving them unable to escape. Good job, Greenhorn! Togata-senpai shouted at him with a smile and thumb up. He nodded at him and jogged to where his classmate was. He saw him deep in the wall, that was cracked all around him, struggling to get out. Kirishima, he called in his usual tone. Turn off your quirk. The boy peeked at him with a silly expression, before releasing his transformation and stepping out from his binding. Thanks for that. The teen said, laughing awkwardly. I should be the one thanking. You saved me from that punch. Shoto countered, bowing his head lightly. Okay, now that this is over, why don't we catch up to the rest? Togata-senpai proposed, pointing at the ladder coming from the ceiling. Before they could make step in that direction, a sound similar to police siren reached them. Gazing up, he saw some red robots, resembling tall trash cans, racing at them. There were so many of them, that he couldn't count them. Looks like there is second wave. The upper classmate said, the lighting once again coming to life around him. Let's get ready to rumble. Kirishima added, changing his palms with his quirk. A huge, excited grin adored his face. Flexing his arms and narrowing his eyes, Shoto got ready for a fight. He wanted to end this quickly, to go and help his friends. Izuku watched Mineta, lying motionless on the floor, holding his crotch. Foam was coming from his mouth and his eyes rolled back onto his skull. The boy did his job right to the T, unlocking the ladder to climb up. Getting punishment for all the perving he has done, was in some way the cherry on top. Puppy came forward, grabbing the teen by the back of his shirt while keeping him at arm's length. Like that, mama? The robot asked, looking at Momo for approval. Exactly like that. Good boy, puppy. Momo replied proudly. A vicious smirk on her lips. Why, even when she was acting scary she was so hot. Let's get moving now. Izuku ordered, gaining the attention from the group. Toshi, Ida-kun, please lead the way. Me and Kaminari-kun will cover our backs. Also, whenever someone spots a camera, destroy it or let the other know. We can't let the villains get our position again. They all nodded at him, showing that they understood the seriousness of the situation. Last time they were lucky, but now they couldn't afford any more hitches on their plan. Looking at his power levels, he still had 80% of power, while Toshi's suit was at the same level and Puppy had almost emptied the palladium core on the first reactor. The secondary one would come online any minute now. Considering there was no more trouble along the way, their reactors wouldn't run out of juice before getting the security system under control. He doubted that the universe would give him that comfort, but he had to hope everything would work out. Midoriya, you're a great leader, you know? Kaminari-kun said, with a kind smile, pulling him out from his musing. Was he? Maybe after watching the whole MCU for 100 times, he learnt a thing or two about leadership, and being the boss at the bookstore probably helped some. Thanks, he replied, smiling behind the faceplate. They were coming to the 130th floor, but there was still no sign of trouble. There was no way that the villains didn't see the lack of feed from the destroyed cameras, so why was their path was still clear? They're probably preparing a trap for us. Momo stated grimly, as if reading his thoughts. I agree, this is going too well. All shutters were open since the 100th floor. Ida-kun added, looking around for any sign of trouble. But at least we're moving forward. Mei told them, lightening the mood slightly. Those doors ahead of us, Melissa called, pointing at the closed entrance with a window in it. They lead to the laboratory. We can go through there as a shortcut to the emergency stairs, instead of running the whole corridor. That's great. Jiro-san happily commented. What's inside? Melissa tilted her head, humming a bit. If I'm not mistaken, scientists have their terrariums with ants, spiders, and other small animals like that. Let's keep going then. Mei shouted, quickening her pace a bit. Her voice sounded rather distressed. Mei, what's wrong? Momo asked, worried, stopping their group. Their girlfriend was pale, shivering in place, her unfocused eyes were glued to the floor. She looked like she was truly terrified of something. I can't handle spiders. The girl admitted in a low whisper. In the corner of her eyes, they could see tears beginning to build up. They're gross, hairy and scary. My brother used them to freak me out. Her hands shoot forward, catching him and Momo in bear hug. I don't want to go there, please. He had never seen her this frightened before, and all because of little creatures that were more scared of her than the other way around. Mei was a lot of things, but he wasn't expecting her to be scared of spiders. However, they couldn't afford to skip the shortcut, they had people to save. Mei, calm down. Everything is going to be okay. Momo said in gentle voice, petting their girlfriend's hair in a soothing manner. Opening his face mask and then kissed her on the forehead. Those spiders are behind the glass, they won't reach you. The girl looked up at them with teary eyes and slightly puffy cheeks. Even when terrified, she was still so adorable. Nothing is going to happen, she asked in a whisper. Nothing. We'll get past them without trouble. Momo assured, planting a kiss on top of Mei's head. Yeah, about that. Toshi said, looking through the window in the doors with a small grimace. We've got company there. More villains? Ida-kun questioned in concern. No, security robots. They're roaming between tables with terrariums and equipment. The boy stated and glanced at Izuku. What are going to do, boss? Biting his lip, he turned to Melissa. Do those robots have any weapons? He wouldn't be surprised if they had, non-lethal ones of course. Arming a bunch of bots with guns, or some other deadly devices would be truly unwise. As far as I'm aware, they only have a thick cable. They use it to catch and restrict the target's movement. The girl answered without missing a beat. Let me take care of them. Kaminari-kun stated in a strong voice, cracking his knuckles, giving out a strangely confident vibe. You're going to release a huge wave of electricity, frying them and your brain, don't you? Jiro-san asked in deadpan voice. And be a deadweight for you guys? Nope. The teen replied with a huge grin. The boy gazed at him and his girlfriends, sending them a wink. Kaminari-kun's hair suddenly became even more spikier than before and his eyes shone a little. A tiny, yellow electric arcs cracked around his body constantly, giving a quiet hum. The teen had his fist clenched tightly with a fierce expression on his face, showing just how concentrated he was. Somehow it reminded Izuku those moments when Thor used his lightning powers to the full extent. I can't keep it up for long. Kaminari-kun grunted out, standing in front of the doors in running position. Let's get rolling then. Toshi said, snapping back his mask and opening the entrance for the teen. When the passage became unblocked, the boy literally shot out from his place, leaving slightly charred panels where he stood. He charged straight at the first bunch of security robots with a surprising amount of speed. Kaminari-kun wasn't as fast as Togata-senpai while using One for All, but he still was much quicker than before. He punched the first machine, sending lightning between the ones near it, frying them instantly. There was a small dent in the robot's armor. Shaken out from the amazement, he ran into the room, the rest following him. Locating the exit, he maneuvered between tables and shelves, trying to keep the robots as far from his classmates as possible. 3 lone robots popped out, blocking their way. Lifting up his hands, Izuku fired his repulsors, shoving the machines away with deep dents in their carcasses. Before he could take out the last one, Kaminari-kun jumped out of nowhere, putting his outstretched palm on top of the robot's head, while upping the power, cutting through it like butter. Standing next to it, the teen grinned widely and gave them shaky thumb up. The boy's lighting vanished, leaving him in rather haggard state. Kaminari-kun sat on the floor, supporting his back against the table. Gazing behind, he saw small piles of machines, some left in smithereens, some just fried. To say he was surprised would be an understatement. It was just 2 weeks ago, when he and his girls gave him some propositions for electrification, and the teen already tested one of them, creating such a powerful move. Wow, jamming way, what was that? Jiro-san asked, still eyeing the destroyed robots. That was my cloak of lighting. Pretty neat, huh? Kaminari-kun replied, trying to get his breathing under control. That technique is quite powerful. You literally cut through those bots with your bare hands. Melissa stated, inspecting the machines. That's right, unfortunately, it seems that the drawbacks to it are severe. Ida-kun added, worried. Yeah. I can't keep it for more than 3 minutes, and after that, I'm not able to move for a while. The teen let out a weak chuckle. Leave me here. You still need to save the day. Looking at the boy for a second, Izuku felt a great amount of respect for Kaminari-kun, who was willingly admitting that he was done for and would only slow them down, all while having a giant grin plastered on his face. Glancing at his child, Izuku made a decision. Puppy, give Kaminari-kun a ride on your back. The teen looked at him with stupefied expression, like he had just heard something utterly weird and couldn't believe his ears. We're not leaving you behind. Momo stated firmly, crossing her arms under her chest. Exactly, we're a team. We take care of each other. Mei stated in a happy tone, yet her face was a serious one. The boy didn't say anything else, just had a small grateful smile on his lips. Moving forward, they kept climbing floors without any more issues. All partitions were open for them and no more security robots showed up. However, this left Izuku worried. Why suddenly, out of nowhere, the villains allowed them to go up so much? It certainly wasn't an act of goodwill. Could they been lead somewhere? To another trap most likely. Jiro-san, can you hear anything? Izuku asked, doing his best to not sound concerned. The girl plugged her jacks into the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. No. The coast is clear, she answered reassuringly. There's another shutter in our way. Ida-kun, who ran ahead, said to them. But the doors are unlocked. Toshi informed, grabbing a handle and looking at him. Must be a trap, Momo said, chewing on her lip. We can't really turn around now, can we? Mei asked, squeezing their girlfriend's hand. This is the 138th floor, the servers' banks for the tower are here. Melissa informed them, while tapping her chin. If other partitions are not closed, then we can access the roof through the wind power generators, with another emergency staircase. So we have no choice? Jiro-san asked, while scowling lightly. I guess not. Izuku didn't really like it, but they really had no choice in that matter. He could ask Puppy to break the barricade with his uni-beam, but there was no telling if the other shutters were also closed. If yes, then the android's remaining arc reactor would run out of juice before they reached the top floor. And his and Toshi's suits were ill-equipped to handle that amount of heat produced by the device. Getting out from the staircase, they ran into the giant room filled up to the ceiling with massive black-red server units. There were quite a few rows of them with passages hanging in the air. Despite the situation, Izuku marveled at the sight, thinking about the things Alan could do with that amount of bytes. Suddenly a set of massive doors opened before them, showing countless amounts of security robots coming online, getting ready to charge at them. A siren sounded from above, announcing that even the more machines were coming on them. Toshi stopped their group and took a battle stance. His whip sprung from his arms as the teen mumbled a word in a language unknown to him. Russian? Or maybe something from Eastern Europe. Language. Momo scolded, the light of creation shining on her back. What? How did you know that I was cursing? Their friend asked loudly. While the proper way of speaking is surely a must, we have greater problems at our hand. Ida-kun exclaimed, looking at him with a hardened expression. Alright, he became the team leader. While he had no doubt that they could break through, it would take them too long and risk getting caught, meaning the end for their mission. Go. Momo told him, creating a Gatling gun with a tripod, its belt of bullets coming out of her chest, although those didn't look like a standard ammunition, more like a rubber bullets. Take May and Melissa with you and go. We'll take care of this. This was the logical solution. It seemed like the enemy pushed most of their forces here to stop their advance. Splitting up was the only way. Puppy, you're coming with us. Izuku ordered his child. The android dropped Mineta on the floor and then crouched down, allowing Kaminari-kun to slip off it. Turning around and opening his mask, he kissed Momo hard on the lips, the girl returning the gesture with just the same amount of fervor. Stay safe. She flashed him a sly smile, before pushing him away to kiss May. He left the group, hoping that everything would turn out okay. Momo, despite keeping her composure, was pissed, fuming even, and God help those villains when, not if, she got her hands on them. She had it all perfectly planned. Woo Izuku and May with her dress, making them unable to keep their eyes off her. Then spent a good time at the party, getting to know some heroes and researchers, while making sure that no one would even try to look at her lovers. After some time she would ask them to go with her to the hotel, cutely pleading that she wanted to have some quality time with them. She would put on some mindless movie, cuddling between Izuku and May. Then after that, she would use some techniques that Midnight taught her, slightly against her will, to make their night perfect. But no. The big, bad, annoying villains just had to ruin her plans to spend an amazing time with her lovers. They were going to pay handsomely for it as well. Kyoko-chan, handle the gun, she ordered, keeping her tone as neutral as possible. She didn't want her friend to know that she was frustrated. Looking ahead, she watched Toshi skillfully moved in the air, swatting his whips, destroying machines left and right, carving rigged gushes in their armor. Occasionally he released a blast from his repulsors, taking down the bots that tried to pass him. Next to him Ida-kun delivered vicious kicks, sending the bots away with cracks and dents, while blue raging flames spewed from his exhaust pipes. A loud war cry, featured by the sound of rapid fire, made her grin a little. The bullets she created were made from hardened rubber, add some more spice to their propellant and those could easily take down any robot charging at them. Of course, if Kyoko-chan wasn't careful while operating the weapon, she would damage the servers, but Momo trusted her friend to be mindful of her aim. Concentrating for a moment, grenades filled with thick glue started popping out from her back. She wasn't just a walking factory, she could to fight too. Turning around to grab one of them, she saw Kaminari-kun holding one. The boy shot her a wobbly smile and stood up on shaky legs. With the newfound respect for her classmate, she pulled out a pin and threw the grenade with all her might at the incoming wave of robots, while he did the same. Momo was going to ensure that she and her friends survived this. She still had to be cuddled at night by her lovers. Izuku did his best to ignore May's enthusiastic explanation that awed Melissa, who still couldn't wrap her head around just how Puppy's uni-beam destroyed the thick, reinforced steel doors, changing them into a pile of scraps. He too was proud of his child's work, but they had more important things to do now. Stepping outside he saw the 4 massive wind turbines connected around a huge metal beam, with a platform in the middle. Looking around, he caught sight of an entrance just a bit above the last row of turbines. They would have to fly up, counting that another shutter wasn't in their way. If he wasn't mistaken, this would put them somewhere around 150th floor. May, hop on. Puppy, grab Melissa. He commanded quickly. While feeling the thrill of doing hero work was definitely awesome, they needed to hurry things up. Not only to finally rescue the hostages from the villain's grasp, but also to allow All Might to stop using his muscle form. The number one hero no doubt was overexerting himself massively trying to keep his secret from the limelight. Before he could take flight, the doors on the far end opened, showing a horde of security robots entering the roof. Seriously? Just how many of those things are here? The timing was really inconvenient too. He would have to stay back, sending girls and his android ahead. They couldn't allow themselves to be stopped now. Just as he was about to say that, a figure rose from the ground and punched the first machine, sending it and others flying in all directions with an obnoxious shout of power. Taking a good look, he saw the bulky form of Togata-senpai wearing just a pair of black boxers. Thank God for DNA clothes. Keep moving, Midoriya. Glancing behind him, he saw Todoroki-san and Kirishima-san taking down another wave of security bots. Be it by skewering them with ice spikes or pummeling them into scraps. Activating his repulsors, he took flight straight towards the maintenance exit. Peeking down to ensure that his companions were doing okay, he tried to not laugh. Togata-senpai and Kirishima-san held onto one of the turbines, rolling it around in a circle, while Todoroki-san kept producing crimson flames from his left side, creating hot wind that pushed all of the machines off the roof. What a silly, ingenious strategy. Having Puppy burst the doors open again, they entered the staircase. Fortunately that one wasn't blocked by the shutters. Finally things were starting to sway in their favor. Checking the number on the wall, Izuku happily confirmed that they had only 50 more floors to go. Alright everyone, this is the last straight, he stated happily, couldn't wait for this self-imposed mission to end. Surprisingly they haven't met any resistance while climbing. Was the enemy focusing their remaining forces on keeping the control room under their thumb? Actually, what was their goal with this attack? Kidnapping someone important? Stealing some gadgets from the tower? Flexing that they could successfully attack one of the most secure places in the world? The last one was a tad insane, but he didn't cross it out yet. People were able to do many things out of petty reasons. A scream reached his ears, making him stop and turn around. He saw a blade sticking out from a gash in the door, Melissa laying on the floor with May protectively over her. A small cut was on the girl's arm. Taking a fighting stance, Izuku immediately fired a double repulsor blast the moment the entrance fully opened. His opponent somehow dodged it in time, by rolling forward while thrusting his right arm at him. The limb changed into another cone-shaped blade. Thinking quickly, Izuku used the repulsors in the soles of his boots, gaining the necessary distance for the sword to only scrape his armor, making the sparks fly. Nice reflexes, kid, but your road ends here. You have given us enough of a headache as it is. The man said in a cocky manner, swinging his arms at him. He was forced to fight at close range, seeing as there wasn't enough space for him to carry on into the air and just shower his opponent with repulsor's blast. Blocking yet another vicious swing with his armored arm, Izuku tried to think of something that would give him the advantage. The man had superior strength and quick reflexes. It was only a matter of time before his suit's folds would give. The armor's only weaponry were repulsors. And at the top of it all, his arc reactor was nearing half of its energy reserve. Wait. Arc reactor. If he could release a low-powered unibeam, just enough to stagger his opponent and not burn himself, then he would sway the fight into his favor. Good thing that May thought to set it as the default state, while making this suit. Stealing his nerves, he watched for a perfect opportunity to do it. Dodging yet another powerful strike, Izuku put himself between his opponent and his companions. The man smirked at him and chuckled. "Ha, not so tough, kid? This toy of yours is no thief." Using the distraction the villain made by himself, Izuku tensed his chest just for a second, releasing a quick unibeam. The attack hit the opponent square on the chest, sending him flying at the wall. Ignoring the uncomfortable heat inside his suit, he began firing a volley of blasts from his hands, making sure to put the man out cold. Stopping for a moment, he saw his enemy slide against the wall with his jaw hanging loose. It looked like he did it. Turning around, he crouched right next to the girls. Inspecting the cut on Melissa's arm, he released his breath. Good, it wasn't deep, just a flesh wound. Sorry for this. The girl said in a dejected manner. It wasn't your fault, if anything I'm responsible for it. I should have paid more attention to our surroundings. Izuku said, scolding himself for his carelessness that led to this. Don't be too hard on yourself. I was supposed to scout for any threats, and I didn't see it coming until it was too late. May told them, angry at herself. She pulled out a handkerchief seemingly out of nowhere and wrapped it tightly around the wound. Melissa released a short laugh, smiling kindly at them. Looks like we all need some more training before we become a full-fledged heroes. Seeing his girlfriend grin at the comment, he too smiled a bit. She was right, they still had a long way to go. Recovering from the surprise attack, they once again begun climbing the stairs. The only other trouble they run into was two guys with machine guns shooting at them, just before the entrance to the top floor. The solution to this problem was waiting till they're out of ammo and take them down with well-aimed repulsor blasts. Which way is to the control room? Izuku asked, peeking around the corner. The corridors were dimly lit, making it easy for another surprise attack. He didn't want that to happen again. It's in front of the central elevator, we just need to move straight ahead. Melissa whispered to him. Finally they were nearly at the end of all this trouble. Now all they needed to do was to restart the security system, which with the three of them should go quickly. Hopefully there wouldn't be any more trouble. Someone's there. May informed him, peeking around the entrance, while hiding behind the wall. Damn, he spoke too soon. Okay, it wasn't that big of an issue. He and Puppy could take care of it. Or at least he believed they could. Papa and Sam? Melissa questioned in disbelief. Snapping out of his thoughts, he too peeked out. Before them was some kind of huge vault. Inside of it was Professor Shield, typing rapidly on a computer and saying something to his partner. Questions started to rise in his head. Why were they here? Did the villains force them to access something valuable in the vault? If yes, then where were the enemies? The two were there alone. We have to save him. Melissa pleaded, looking straight at him. Biting his lip, Izuku considered their options. If they ignored it, they could reset the security system in no time, therefore gaining the upper hand over the villains, but there was the risk that Professor and the other guy were in trouble. Plus this could shed some light into what exactly was going on here. Releasing an irritated sigh, he looked at his girlfriend. May, take Puppy and go to control room, me and Melissa will investigate this. She nodded with an expression serious and kissed him on the lips, before running away with Puppy. Inching closer to the vault, Izuku inspected the inside. The cylindrical walls had light blue lights constantly shining and moving through them, coursing around the gray safe deposit boxes. No one, except for the professor and his partner, were here. This was both good and bad. Good, because there wouldn't be any need to fight. Bad, because something wasn't right. His partner moved to one of the boxes and took out a big suitcase. Opening it, he showed its content to the professor. Zooming his vision closer, Izuku saw the inside. It were some discs, a strange-looking device that had 6 thin belts and a container with bluish-gray liquid in it. Both of them seemed extremely happy about getting it, which only arose more questions. Everything's going according to the plan, right? Sam asked, closing the suitcase and securing it in his arms. Yes, thank you for this, Sam. It's all thanks to those fake villains you arranged. The professor replied, stepping closer to the man. What? A shiver shook his body. This was all arranged by the Professor Shield and his right-hand man? Papa. Melissa said in a deadpan tone. The girl stepped closer with a broken expression on her face, evidently surprising the two men. What do you mean by that? Papa, you're not the one behind this, right? She asked, taking one step at a time. The guilty face on the professor's face was more than enough to give him the answer. Izuku tightened his fist, gritting his teeth hard, as a wave of anger hit him. He didn't want to believe that one of the most known persons that aided heroes in their fight for a peaceful world could do this, and for what? Some fancy gadget? The professor is only getting back what was stolen from him. Sam said, gesturing to the suitcase. This is a groundbreaking invention that mechanically amplifies quirks, without any adverse effects the body like drugs have. Okay, maybe it wasn't some fancy gadget. However, the sponsors confiscated this device and all the research data, freezing any further development. They feared that the information about it would change the structure of our superhuman society in a drastic manner. The governments. I don't care. Izuku shouted in anger, startling everyone. He was fuming, white-hot wrath bubbled inside of him. Why? He asked in a low voice. Why would you do this? What could be so important? This must be a lie. Right, Papa? Melissa said, desperate for this to not be real. It's not. The professor admitted, looking away. It's all might. I did it for him, not many know about it, but his quirk is fading away. However, if we use my device on him, then it can go back to how it was before. Maybe even become stronger. The man spoke with utter conviction. The symbol of peace can get its light back. He can save people longer. The man took the suitcase from Sam and looked at them in a pleading manner. Please let me handle this device to all might. After he gets it, I'll take any kind of punishment. I'm prepared for it. It was all for him? While the motives were noble, the way to do it stained them. Besides, the professor showed just how clingy he was to the world the #1 hero created, not actually caring for All Might himself, or the current generation. That risked everyone's lives. Melissa shouted with tears streaming down from her eyes. She ripped off the bandage, presenting her arm to her father. What do you think we all then threw, to save everyone on the island? The girl spoke in clear anger and disgust. The professor fixed his sight to the wound, his face shifting its features from surprise to confused. What is the meaning of this? The villains were supposed to be fake, an act, duh. He gazed at Sam, who was sweating bullets at this point. Oh, but it was an act. The voice behind them said, making Izuku quickly turn around, just to see the villain in the white dress coat from the party accompanied by a smirking guy with weird goggles next to him. An act pretending to be fake villains. Raising his hand, he was prepared to fire off a repulsor blast, however the linchpin's palm that was touching the vault's gate sparked with blue light. The next thing Izuku knew was that he got hit by a metal fence and plunged into the computers. The pipes wrapping tightly around him, binding his movement almost completely. Crap, crap, crap. This guy had to have some kind of metal manipulation quirk. This was very, very bad. His suit was absolutely useless in this kind of situation. Scratch that, Central Tower was mostly made out of steel, so it meant that this man was pretty much unbeatable. Now we can't have you interrupting us. The villain said smugly, walking further into the room. Turning to PF Shield and Sam, he asked. Sam, the device please. The chubby man took the suitcase from the shocked David and ran down from where he was. Sam? Did you trick me? Were you working with villains from the start? The professor asked, not hiding the bewilderment at the betrayal of his right-hand man. You're the one who tricked me. The aide replied harshly, stopping in front of the linchpin. I served you for so many years, but you allowed your research to be frozen so easily. The honor and renown we were going to achieve went away. If I didn't get at least some money, then it would be a total waste of my time. It would ruin me. So the fat sleazebag did it all, because he wanted a cash? Yet another reason to be angered, but before he could serve justice, he needed to get out from his bindings. Melissa pulling the metal with all her might didn't do much. A gunshot rang across the whole room. Snapping his gaze back forward, he saw the linchpin aiming a gun at the downed aide, who was holding his shoulder tightly, trying to stop the blood that was seeping out. The man tried to argue about something, disbelief clearly lacing his voice. However, the villain just stepped closer, aimed his weapon again, he pulled the trigger, but the bullet never hit its target, embedding itself into the professor, who jumped to shield the man. Melissa rushed toward her father to help him, but the linchpin hit her with the handle of the gun, sending her on the floor. Gritting his teeth, Izuku couldn't believe just how pathetic he was. He got caught off guard, leading to him being trapped. He was going to be a hero someday, but that didn't mean he wasn't going to do something right now. He half listened to the words the boss villain was telling the professor. Izuku had to agree that the deed the man did was horrible and would no doubt be a great stain on his record, but his stupid heroic heart was moved by it. He promised himself that after all of this was over, he would have a long talk with David about believing in the next generation of heroes. The linchpin knocked the professor out cold and aimed his gun at Melissa, claiming that she was an unnecessary attachment. Okay Izuku, time to get your things together and finally do something. Putting his palms and feet flat against the wall, he pushed on the releasers, pumping out as much power from the arc reactor toward the repulsors as he could, not really caring about his energy reserves. His bindings gave, snapping like twigs, and he shot forward at a great speed. He tackled the villain, making him lose hold of the professor. Placing his arm on the linchpin's chest, he let out a powerful blast, sending the guy to crash against the wall. Landing on the ground, he peeked behind him. David had a deep wound on his right side, which bled quite heavily. He needed to do something to stop it, or the man's life would be at risk. A sinister chuckle reached him. Moving his eyes forward, the villain crouched with his hands touching the floor. You surprised me, Iron Man. The man admitted. But this is where your story ends. A blue light enveloped the villain's palms and Izuku braced himself for what was about to come. only for nothing to happen at all. Looking at the linchpin, he saw that the man was surprised by this too. The blue aura of his quirk appeared again, yet there was still no effect. This usually works, the villain's boss said, gazing at his arms. Finally, something wasn't against him. This guy had a quirk that allowed him to manipulate metal, but it seemed only certain types were within his range. And Izuku's suit was fully made out of a gold titanium alloy. This was his chance. He wouldn't get another one. You know, he said, dragging his voice a little, to show just how much pressure he got out of it. Performance issues are not uncommon. 1 out of 5. He was cut off by a metal column slapping into him, throwing him to the other side of the room, knocking the air out of his lungs. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Why did he have to give out the perfect opportunity to finally end this nightmare party, just to play off the scene from the Avengers? He was only thinking one thing. Worth it. Picking himself back up, he saw on the display that the torso and back of his suit were pretty damaged. Small sparks coming out from it only confirmed it. His energy levels weren't that good looking too. Only 32% remained. No more fooling around. Looking at Melissa, he nodded at her, hoping that she understood his intentions. Seeing as the girl rose up and began sprinting away, it seemed like she did. The other villain began to run, most likely wanting to intercept her, but Izuku took into the air and fired a dual repulsor blast, stopping the man. The sound of whistling air behind him reached his ears. Giving a short burst from repulsors, he dodged another twisted metal construction that was aimed at him. Glancing around, he saw more incoming at him. Thankfully, he had aerial superiority here. Flying around the room, he fired a blast of energy at the linchpin, who hid himself under a metal dome. They were at a standstill, but it was more than okay with Izuku. Actually, this suited him perfectly. If he managed to keep the boss here, then the heroes would have an easier time catching him after they were freed. A column arose next to him, but he skillfully maneuvered to the side, dodging the attack. However, what he didn't expect was a spike to spring forward from it. It hit his shoulder, completely destroying the armor there and grazed his flesh. Shocked by the hit and pain, he got caught in another mass of metal that brought him down, painfully crashing against the floor. A low sound, like something depowering itself, rang through the room. Was security system resetting? Hopefully, he didn't know if he could get out of this one. Looking around, he saw the villains running out from the vault with the professor and suitcase in tow. A traitorous part of his brain said that he did enough and could rest, leaving everything in the hands of the heroes. He had to admit, he was exhausted and battered after everything that happened, but what kind of hero would he be if he stopped now? Tony quit only once, when he couldn't see a way to overcome the situation, but otherwise he always pushed forward. Besides, Stan would give him a lecture in the afterlife. Gritting his teeth tightly, Izuku twisted his palms and shifted his feet, so they were laying flat against the floor. Using his repulsors, he slowly began to rise from the pile of heavy metal that was covering him. But it wasn't enough, he needed something more. Bracing for the pain that was about to come, he released the uni-beam, blowing away the obstacle. He sniffed out the smell of his shirt and skin singing from the heat, followed by the pain. He focused on something else, not wanting it to get in his way. An alert on his cracked display came. Energy was down to 19%. Some parts of his armor were severely damaged. He could feel the bruises and a concussion slowly getting to him. Is that all you've got, universe? Sprinting out of the vault, he ran toward the rooftop. If villains wanted to get away, then this was the most likely way to do it. Take a chopper, and fly away. He wouldn't allow them to do it. Plus the blood from the professor's wound was quite a dead giveaway. Spotting an open room on his way, he checked it to see if he could find a shortcut, and find one he did. While sprinting, Izuku fired off a blast to get rid of the glass and jumped through a window in the room. Activating his repulsors, he rocketed towards the rooftop. Once he got there, he saw the villains approaching a helicopter. He still had some time left before the rotor blades would have enough speed for takeoff, so maybe he could damage them with his repulsors? Oh, that's surprising. The linchpin called him across the rooftop, slightly stepping forward, as if he wanted to protect the machine from him. Did you come here to save this man who sinned? The man asked smugly. What's the deal with his weird religious mannerisms? Choosing to stall for time, he laughed. You know, hero complex and all that. The man slammed his hand against the floor. The blue aura signaling the activation of his quirk appeared, using it to send a giant pillar of metal from the roof straight at him. Izuku sidestepped it and flew forward. Maneuvering in the air, he continued to dodge more steel constructions flying at him. Now, being in an open field, he could easily move around, showing the linchpin that he wasn't going down again that easy. I commend your effort, but how are you going to save him? The villain questioned, pointing his gun at the professor. Don't worry about me, David said in a strained voice. Izuku flew back a bit and hovered above the ground. He had his hands tied. Even repeating the stain incident wasn't an option, seeing as the professor was directly behind the linchpin. My God, being a hero is so inconvenient. The villain boss taunted in smug tone. Just threaten the life of the one to be saved, and you can't move. A sharp spike sprung from the ground, taking a chunk of his mask, destroying the left side of it, almost taking his eye out. Hastily flying around, Izuku did his best to dodge all of the incoming columns, which drove him further and further away from the helicopter. Suddenly something hit him from the side, throwing him around, only for a pillar to crash into him, sending his body rolling on the ground. Groaning from the pain, Izuku pushed himself up, just in time to see the chopper taking off. He couldn't allow them to get away, not with the professor and that device. He bet that the villain wouldn't use his quirk in the aircraft. Running a little, he jumped up and rocketed toward the helicopter. He hit it hard with his body, swaying the machine in the air. It didn't matter, all he needed to do was to grab David and fly away. He could always destroy the suitcase along with the device with his repulsor. He reached his arm toward the professor, trying to cling to the aircraft. The man looked at him with disbelief. Midoriya, get away. David pleaded. I can't. You and me have to have a talk about heroics. Besides, Melissa is still believing in you, he tried to reason with the man. Plus he doubted that they had time for the spat right now. You're indeed a hero. Snapping his gaze at the linchpin, he saw the villain pointing the gun at him. Thinking quickly, he rocked the helicopter. Yet the bullets still flew at him, pushing him away. Suddenly his display started fading away and his repulsors didn't function properly. The arc reactor. It must have been hit, and with that unsteady flow of energy he was forced to let the villains escape with the professor. But honestly, it wasn't his biggest worry. Could he land now? He didn't want to fall from the skies. Even hitting the rooftop, he would still hurt himself badly. I've got you, father. Puppy said, catching him in his arms and safely lowering them down. Looking toward the entrance to the roof, he saw May and Melissa. The two ran toward him. His girlfriend immediately enveloped him in a tight hug, checking for injuries. She had a slightly haunted expression. He must have scared her. Izuku, are you all right? Melissa asked, worried. Your suit? She said with a gasp, taking the sights of him. Looking down, he saw that his reactor's light was flickering. It wouldn't hold for long. He had to think of something. A way to get back the professor and stop the villains. There had to be? A loud, obnoxious laugh reached his ears. Turning to the side, he saw All Might rocketing up in the air, far above the aircraft. The number one hero somehow stopped in mid-air, bending the laws of physics in his favor, producing a huge wave of air that halted the chopper in place. Launching himself at the machine, screaming about being here and friendship, the helicopter exploded, crashing against the roof in a ball of fire. As for All Might, the hero gracefully landed next to them with the professor in his arms. He chose not to comment on just how ridiculous this was. He didn't want to destroy the touching moment before him. Unfortunately, a rather mean metal pillar had another opinion, blasting away the number one hero. A mass of cables shot out from the ground, catching the professor and taking him away toward. Okay, pause. What is that? The villain boss was completely unharmed with the device around his head. A mass of wires and metal created a platform for him, rising further up in the air. Behind him all sorts of cables joined together, making some sort of limb that moved around. All Might jumped forward, preparing to hit the linchpin into next week, but the man just swatted his arm, summoning a massive wall of metal to block the hit and stop the advance of the symbol of peace. A pillar hits the hero, sending him to the ground yet again. A light blue glow illuminated the tower, tearing off and levitating more metal pieces to join the villain's platform, changing it into the mass of seemingly living steel, which reached into the sky. He swallowed hard. This was bad. This was really, really bad. Even All Might had trouble getting through the barrage of metal columns heading his way. We need to run, he screamed, pushing the girls to move. Suddenly the rooftop cracked from all of the attacks and lack of the steel beams supporting it. Seeing as Melissa was about to fall, Izuku squeezed the last remaining bits of power from his reactor and flew, catching the girl. They crashed a few meters away, him taking the hit. Glancing up, he saw the next volley of pillars coming at the struggling All Might, who couldn't move from the place they landed. Just as the hero was about to be hit, the mass of metal got enveloped in thick ice, freezing it up to where the villain was. A call for power could be heard as Togata-senpai sailed through the air, destroying some more columns, allowing Symbol of Peace to get away. Looking to the side, he saw Momo and others leaving the elevator. They all looked rather ragged, but their expressions were one of determination. He felt a bit of hope beginning rise. With all of them here, they could aid All Might and somehow overpower the villain. Well them. He was pretty much useless now. Without his suit, all he could do was to command the others. Father. Puppy called him. The android crouched next to him, its chest piece opening itself slightly. The machine grabbed arc reactor and took it out, presenting it to him. Kick his ass. The robot said, before the remaining energy disappeared. He felt a lone tear escape his eye. His child gave him the chance to fight and save the day. He wouldn't waste it. Nodding at a flabbergasted Mei, he signaled her to help him to change the reactors. His girlfriend wordlessly grabbed the device from Puppy's frozen palm and started tinkering with his suit. Izuku! Momo shouted, running to him. She was short on her breath, and looked like she was about to drop dead, yet she still pushed forward. Crouching next to him, she inspected his armor. Are you all right? She asked in worry. Chuckling to himself, he pushed what's left his face mask open and smiled a bit. Been better, he said in a cheerful tone, making her snort. Looking around, he saw that was Toshi flying around, destroying the lumps of metal with his whips. Following him were Itakuan and Kirishima-san, who were kicking and punching steel pillars. All Might was literally smashing his way toward the villain. Next to the elevator were the rest, hidden behind a barrier made out of riot shield, no doubt made by Momo. He saw the flicker of flames, showing him that Todoroki-san was still recovering. He felt like they had a pretty good chance at. A sudden explosion snapped him out from his thoughts. Seeing Togata-senpai punching his way through the metal cubes, freeing the Symbol of Peace from them. A numerous of long, steel spears were plunged through the remaining mass of metal. Both of them landed on the ground, looking battered. He heard a soft whine coming from his suit and saw Mei grinning brightly at him. He was back in the business. Stealing a quick kiss from his girls, he stood up with fire in his eyes. Izuku, Melissa called him, sobbing lightly. Please, save my papa. That's the plan, he replied, snapping his faceplate back on his face. He took into the air, to where All Might and his senior were. I leave you unsupervised for one day, and you already got into a battle with a villain, sir. Alan's deadpan voice sounded through his helmet, putting a smile on his face. What took you so long? He asked, watching the linchpin carefully. Since when did that guy started to glow purple? I couldn't get through, no matter which satellite I used. The AI admitted bitterly. I've already sent a message to the other heroes, asking them for assistance. They will be here shortly. Is there anything else you want me to do, sir? Humming to himself, Izuku landed next to the hero and his upper classmate, who looked at him weirdly. A final boss battle music would do, and you too, we've got work to do. They chuckled at him and got into battle stances. Just when the first chords of Immigrant Song carried through the whole of Island, both of them shoot forward with the dazzling display of speed. The duo began to punch their way through the lumps of metal, racing toward the villain. As for him, he got into the air, making circles around the writhing construction. From time to time, he released a repulsor blast, taking the metal cube of its course, just to annoy the linchpin. However, his main target was finding the professor in that mass of cables and wires. He spotted David's unconscious form. The man was rather close to where the linchpin was, but the villain's attention was drawn away by All Might and Togata-senpai, who were slowly closing the distance between them. Using this chance, he flew closer and destroyed the bindings with his repulsors. Carefully taking hold of the professor, he flew away, making a lap around the construction, not wanting to be spotted. Nearing the barricade, he slipped David into Jiro-san's and Kaminari-kun's arms. Well, that went surprisingly easy. He expected that he was going to struggle with it more, but he wasn't going to kick the gift horse in the mouth. Turning around, he saw that the villain was gathering all of his remaining metal into one humongous cube. If this thing hit them, the whole central tower would collapse. All Might and Togata-senpai wouldn't reach it in time. He wasn't going to allow this. He needed to stop the man. Rocketing forward, the words that Stain said to him, before dying, rung in his mind. He couldn't get close and his repulsors could easily be blocked. This left him with only one option left. Alan, all power to the chest repulsor. Steeling his nerves and gritting his teeth tightly, he unleashed an unibeam straight at the villain. As he suspected, the enemy tried to shield himself from it, but the laser blasted through it, severing his arm from his body. A wave of pain washed over him, his vision blacked out a bit and a white noise filled his ears. The scorching heat in his chest was unbearable. Even mentally preparing himself for it, he still didn't expect to be hurt this badly by his own attack. He crashed onto the ground, gasping for air. He felt like he might pass out any minute now. He heard some voices calling him, but he couldn't speak due to pain. Suddenly he felt his suit becoming loose and something cold pressing against his chest. Blinking away his tears, he took a ragged breath. Glancing around, he saw that he was nested in a tight hug between his girlfriends. On his chest was a cube of ice, kept in place by Todoroki-san. Around them the rest of 1A gathered, cheering at something. Turning his head to the side, he saw All Might and Togata-senpai sailing through the sky, featured by the rising sun, the massive construction blown into smithereens. Ha, they won, and it took them till dawn. Honestly, he was just glad that it was over. Pushing his head a bit, he placed kisses on his girlfriend's cheeks and smiled at them. We did it, he said, his voice weak. Momo shook her head and tried to send him a glare, but the grin on her face destroyed it. You're so reckless, she told him, petting his cheek. You big dummy. Mei scolded him, pouting cutely at him. The girl nuzzled closer to him. Great job, Greenhorn. Togata-senpai shouted, popping next to them from the ground, and giving them a thumbs up. Your very first mission as heroes ended in success. They all chuckled at the teen's words. It did, didn't it? That was one hell of an experience for them. If they still wanted him to give a lecture during the day, he was going to tell them to shove it. He wanted to sleep, and if his girls joined him in this, then all the better. Togata-senpai. Todoroki-san called the boy with a serious expression. Are you perhaps All Might's secret love child? He asked with a straight face. What? Their senior questioned with a stupefied expression. Yeah, both of you have blonde hair, blue eyes, are super buff and have obnoxious laughs. Mei stated, apparently joining in unraveling their weird secret that wasn't there. Izuku chose not to comment on it. Besides, his eyelids shut themselves before he even could do it. The following days on Island were rather hectic. After he passed out on the rooftop, he was transported to the hospital, where the doctors patched him up. Fortunately, his injuries were only a minor concussion, a small wound on his shoulder, few bruised ribs, a second-degree burn on his torso and tons of scratches. Nothing too major. Momo and Mei kept him company all the time, and the rest visited him briefly. He finally got a chance to talk with Kirishima-san. After they chatted for a bit, he understood why the boy felt awkward around him. The teen just wasn't sure how to act, seeing as he had some personal problems with the Pomeranian. Izuku assured him that they were cool. Of course, he also got a visit from the council members that were responsible for keeping Island in order. All of them thanked him for protecting their home, making him give excuses that he wasn't the only one responsible for it. They also said that Island had his back, whatever that meant. However, that wasn't the only reason for them coming to him. They questioned him about the events, saying that they already had statements from other students and Melissa. Apparently David was already under charges, and even with All Might's backing, he wouldn't be let without punishment. And so Izuku told them the truth, trying to lessen the penalty that awaited the man. As for right now, it was the last day for them on Island. Their plane was already waiting for them, but he still had one last business to take care of. This, of course, was his talk with the professor, who was kept under the watchful gaze of the police in his hospital room. David's life was saved by the surgeons here, putting the man in bed for about a month. David fidgeted nervously, trying to not look at Izuku's angered face. I'll cut to the chase, he said with a huff. I'm pissed off at you. It's not about hiring the villains and putting everyone in danger. It's about your lack of faith in future generation of heroes, he stated sharply, making the man wince slightly. All Might, while being an extraordinary hero, is just a human. He too has his limits. I understand that now, David said in low, remorseful tone. I desperately clung into the light he illuminated, hoping that he would protect us forever. But I was stupid enough to think a single pillar could hold the peace forever, no matter how strong it is. The professor looked at him with hopeful eyes and a small smile. But you showed me that the future isn't as dark as it seems. He was a bit shocked by the man's words. Looks like almost dying by the hands of crazy villains, and putting his daughter in danger opened his eyes. The professor opened a drawer and fished out a USB stick, presenting it to him. This is something that I found when I was younger. It origins from the old research before quirks came to be. David let out a short laugh. I couldn't figure out was what there. But I hope that you, Izuku Midoriya, can solve this mystery. Taking the drive from his palm, he nodded at the man. It was the professor's way of redeeming himself, and he wouldn't allow it to remain unanswered. Standing up from a chair, he left the room wordlessly. What needed to be said, was already said. He hoped that David recovered and his punishment wasn't too severe. The man was still one of the brightest minds the world had. He was slightly surprised when Melissa passed him with a beet red face, running away from Toshi, who hid something in his pocket. Right, during the fight the girl lost her footing and fell from the roof. His friend saw it and divided after her, saving her life in the process. However, something put a pit in Izuku's stomach. Toshi told him that his suit stopped working for a moment, almost making them crash against the pavement. Alan did the diagnostic check, but hadn't found any anomaly, which would result in this accident. Something didn't add up. Falling into step with his friend, they walked toward the airport in relative silence, both of them too deep in their thoughts. However, "So, did she give you her number?" Izuku asked smugly with a shit-eating grin in his lips, causing Toshi to blush heavily. Oh, he couldn't wait for Momo to hear about this. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe and support the original writer. See you guys in the next part.